It's about changing how you think and challenging those thoughts.
Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Sharon Sutton.
Angela Clucas, the owner of Next Level Nutrition Isle of Man, is a university qualified nutritionist with over 6 years of experience coaching people to achieve their weight and health goals. She's passionate about helping people regain control of their health and happiness by prioritising their needs so they can feel in control. Angela is friendly, non-judgemental, and passionate about helping people make lifelong changes. Angela describes her life story to me. I like to make some pretty bold changes, and I've never been afraid of change. It has been a bit of a journey in getting to where I am now. So here is Angela Clucas's journey in her own words in episode 87 of Island Influencers. So welcome to Island Influencers podcast. Angela Clucas, so delighted to have you here. Thank you for coming along.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're so welcome. Now, I wonder, for the benefit of our listeners, if you'd like to just tell everybody all about yourself, where you've come from and how you've got to this point with running your Next Level Nutrition on the Isle of Man. It's, as I said to you before when you arrived, I've been stalking you for a little bit on LinkedIn, and it looks like a pretty varied career you've had.
Yeah, it has been a bit of a journey in getting to where I am now. Yeah, I went to school on the island at Clothworkers and then QE2.
Oh, Peel girl.
Yeah, Peel girl, born and bred. and then I didn't ever plan to go to university straight away. I wasn't particularly academic at school, and I was began working in IT. A short stint at Ramsey Cook Stockbrokers, and then I went to the employment agency and I was like, I want to work in IT, and they were like, well, you can't really just do that without any qualifications. But I was pretty determined that that's what I wanted to do, and I got a sort of apprenticeship with Bibby's shipping company.
Okay.
And then I moved to Glasgow with a boyfriend at the time who was studying. And when I was there, I'd got into going to the gym, and I used to talk all the time about food and nutrition. And it was my team leader there who was like, why don't you do this as a job? And I was sort of like, oh, this is a job.
So how did you get so passionate about food?
I think I started to go to the gym, and up until that point, so I was about 18, I'd never really had any knowledge of diets or dieting or...
But were you sporty?
No.
Okay.
I rode horses.
Yeah.
That was my sort of passion as a teenager. And it was when I started to go to the gym, I just started to notice how, like, I had some basic advice off PTs and stuff like that, and I was fascinated by how what you ate could change your body. And I just became like completely fascinated by how that worked, and I just wanted to know more and more about it.
And were you sort of fascinated by a particular role model in the gym, or was it just generally... Because you go to the gym, I go to the gym, and you see all sorts of shapes and sizes, don't you? And was there any particular PTs that you were inspired by?
There was a lady called Jane who was the gym owner's girlfriend, and we became friends. And I was just like, I'd never really spoken to a woman who strength trained, and so that was really interesting.
And what year would that have been?
That was in the year 2000.
Yeah.
And I just remember seeing her like and thinking, wow, like your arms look incredible. And I didn't really know that was something you could do. I thought your body was just your body. And so I started to read up on it, and I just found it was something I could spend hours and hours reading about. So this team leader said to me, well, why don't you do it as a career? And so I looked up sort of nutrition courses, and I spoke to Manchester Met, because I just had this notion, and I guess I've kind of been led a lot by this in my life. Like, I just get an idea and I do it. That I wanted to live in Manchester. So I spoke to them, and they said, well, you don't have a science A-level. So I said, well, what if I could get one before September? So this was in the November prior. So I did biology A-level in my kitchen.
Okay, very good. Did you do it at QE2 a bit?
No,
or
it was like a home study.
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was through, but yeah. So, and then I went to uni and studied nutrition.
Excellent. That's really that's that's a calling, isn't it? And just put your life on.
Yeah.
What happened to the boyfriend in Glasgow? Did he come to Manchester or?
He did come to Manchester, but he didn't make it any further than Manchester.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So what happened then?
So then I graduated. I graduated with a first, which was incredible considering I'd never considered myself academic my whole life. And then it was 2007 by this point. I thought I'll go home and then I'll try and work things out. And then there was the recession.
Yes.
There were no jobs at all. And I just ended up going back into, then actually I tried to become an accountant.
Oh.
So I had a short stint at KPMG and then I quickly realised that maybe that wasn't for me. And I ended up moving back to Manchester. So I just worked for another 4 or 5 years there in in IT, a brief stint in fashion, and then in telecoms.
Yes.
And then I realised that wasn't really working out for me, moved back to the Isle of Man. And that's kind of where things really started to change. So I worked for a payroll company, and the manager of the team was just a woman who really inspired me. For the first time, she talked to me all about kind of mindset and behaviour change and how you could sort of work on the way you thought about things. And I was like, oh,
That's amazing.
yeah, this feels like something that also I feel really like aligned with, really interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing that, working my way up the corporate ladder, got promoted to manager. And then I was like, I still just want to be a nutritionist.
Wow.
And I just couldn't really let go of that. So I thought, right, I need to make a change. So I applied for a master's and went back and did that.
And nutrition, you can learn about it, but you can actually apply it daily in your
Yeah.
life too. Were you bringing in any practices into what you were eating and what those around you were eating? Were you able to make any sort of changes that you made a noticeable difference to yourself?
Well, I've pretty much done every fad diet going, despite my education. And I think one thing I really noticed in myself was I was always searching for like the magic answer.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing that's going to change everything.
There seem to be a lot of magic answers, doesn't there?
Yeah, and unfortunately,
to the uninitiated.
Yes, lots of magic answers, and funnily enough, none of them seem to work. And I think that's kind of what really led me back into it, to think there's got to be a different way to do this.
Yeah.
And so through working on like my mindset around stuff, applying what I knew through my education, I was like, it's got to be all about the long term, not just these quick fixes. Yeah, I went back and actually did my master's in sports nutrition, and I had big dreams of traveling with Team Sky and working with Chris Froome and all of that. And then
Curing his Bilharzian.
So I came back after the masters, and I did work with a lot of local athletes, but it quickly just shifted into weight loss, and then it more so shifted into working with women. And then it's kind of niched itself down into working with people who kind of struggle to prioritize their own needs, and maybe, weight loss is what they're looking for, but it's not. It's a bigger picture than that.
Okay. So did the masters, did that cover aspects of that as well? Because I suppose the male and the female anatomy, very different dietary stuff.
Yeah.
Lots of different things going on.
Stuff, yeah. Different dietary requirements, and also I find really different mindset. So I notice more, like when I was working with male, especially athletes, it's just like, tell me what to eat and I'll eat it if I get those results. Whereas I think and not to say that it's completely that way or not, but for most people that I worked with in my experience, it was like that for the guys. And then for the women, there seemed to be a lot more other stuff going on around the impact of other things that impacted their food choices, such as, looking after children or looking after elderly parents or working full-time plus running a household.
Or all three.
Yeah, all
Four.
three at
Or
once.
four. Yes. Yeah.
So, and not to say obviously that men don't have those things, but I don't know, it just seems to be, in my experience, the women that I work with tend to take on more of that responsibility.
There's plenty of evidence that shows that women do tend to be more the carer for the family. But yes, it's not totally exclusively women, but probably the majority is a fair assessment. And certainly from your your evidence from your practice, presumably you can back that up.
Yeah, that is definitely my experience, or certainly the people that come to me for help anyway. I think it does massively impact people's food choices, because when you're spending all of your energy making sure everyone else around you has got what they need, then it's 9 o'clock at night, you haven't eten, so you just eat toast. And then your energy's in the bin.
Let's face it, we've all done it.
We've all been there.
Yeah. So tell me what happens when you work with someone. What does that look like?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So a really interesting thing, actually, lots of people start to work with me and then they say, I didn't really know what to expect, but it definitely wasn't this, which I love, because I think people have a perception that if I go to a nutritionist, they'll tell me I need to eat vegetables, I can't eat chocolate, and everything's about restriction and being strict, whereas my approach is the complete opposite of a lot of the restrictive values.
Okay.
So I work with people to look at what they already do now, and then how do they optimize that so it stays within their lifestyle. So they can still eat with the family, they can still go out for brunch with whoever they want, they can do all of those things, but they learn how to balance it to get the results that they want as well.
Right. Okay. And is that sort of around a diary, or how does it work?
Yeah, so the sort of day-to-day process is I get people to keep food diaries in the first instance. It becomes less important as the journey goes on and we talk more about kind of thought processes and challenging beliefs around certain things. So like the treat yourself mindset. So, I've had a really bad day, I'm going to treat myself to wine and chocolates and then I'm going to be up all night with heartburn.
Yeah. Not tempting.
No. So it's really getting people to think about the way they think, and is that really a treat for you if then it ruins your sleep and you are awake half the night? So it's thinking, what could you do as a different response there? What could truly treat you that you can have access to within that environment that you're in?
Yeah. So it sounds like I say, a lot of mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely more mindset, because I always say to people, like, nobody needs to be told to eat a salad.
No, not many people want to eat a salad, not especially when it's
not in this weather.
No. We're recording in February, although it's not
too bad today.
But it's still winter, Isle of Man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful, and I noticed from when I was looking at the information, you do one-to-one coaching and you do a free 5-day challenge. So, what's that about?
Oh yeah, so the 5-day challenge has just finished, which was, I think, I really want to get the message out there that it's about changing how you think and challenging those thoughts, rather than just being set macros and being told to eat more protein. So I feel like through...
Yeah, I've been there. Done that. Yeah. Okay.
And it can work for a while to get a certain result, but my mantra is, whatever you do to make a change has to be what you're willing to do to maintain that change. So if you want to go all in and really like shred and get super lean and get the pictures, or wear the dress or do whatever the thing is, that's great, but it's understanding that you probably can't maintain what you did to get there to stay there. And I think that's a really important piece that doesn't get communicated.
No.
So
well, you see a lot of PTs, I suppose, do a 6-week shred, do an 8-week shred, do a 12-week shred. But maybe if it was more focused on the long term, and everybody would be happier.
Yeah. And I think those kind of programs, if somebody's got a very specific goal in mind, or they want to do a challenge, that there's a place. But I did a bikini fitness competition in 2017 because I felt like I wanted to put myself through that athlete process. And considering I can't do any other sport, I thought, well, I can lift weights. So that's what I went for. And, I was like, it got to a point like a couple of weeks before the show where I was living on 1,100 calories. I was eating courgette and cauliflower with protein powder for breakfast and calling it porridge. And
yum.
Yeah, I was sleeping in my car in between appointments because I was so exhausted. And then I went on stage. That was terrifying. And then afterwards...
You get all spray tan and everything.
Yeah, they spray tan you in places I don't even want to mention. But
the mind boggles.
Yeah. Afterwards, I couldn't... As soon as that competition finished, I couldn't stop eating. And it was like all the restriction had been lifted. And I ended up gaining the 8 kilos I'd lost for the show.
8 kilos?
Plus another 10.
Oh my goodness, but losing 8 kilos in the first instance, that's amazing.
It was,
it
was extreme. And that for those reasons, knowing that what it can lead to afterwards, I think you have to go into it fully aware of those things.
Yeah, and so the 5-day challenge that you just did, is it possible to see the possibility of change within that short period of time? I mean, is that what it's about? Just to try and waken people up and
to give them a sort of a taste of what it is like to dial into that kind of mindset shift. So some of the stuff we did in there was like appropriate goal setting. So another thing I see in people, they'll come to me and they're like, right, I want to lose 3 stone in a month. And I'm like, well, okay, why is that important? So I always ask people why. And then it's usually, well, I want to get back to that weight as quickly as possible. And it's like, okay, but it didn't take you 1 month to get there. And going through and making it really realistic for people and setting goals that they can achieve, so then they can, because people always say, how do I stay motivated? I'm like, well, you stay motivated by allowing yourself to win, not setting yourself up to fail.
That's very important. I like that. Thank you. For me, it always seems like it's so easy to gain weight, and yet it takes forever to lose it. Is that just my perception, or is it actually a reality? Yeah,
it's actually a reality. And if you think of it in like simple maths terms, like say, for example, you go on holiday and you eat maybe 1,000 calories extra per day on top of what you would normally eat because you're having ice cream and nice meals out. When you get back, you don't eat 1,000 calories under what your maintenance is, because that would probably be, next to nothing. So it's very easy to overeat, but actually really hard to cut back. So that's why we gain quickly and lose slowly.
I think it's worse when you get older.
Yes, it does.
Lovely. And all the things you like. Oh goodness. And you also have a shift, a course by Next Level Nutrition. What's that? What's that course?
Yep. So that's the kind of follow on from the 5-day challenge. So if people are enjoying that kind of mindset work, then they can purchase a ready to go course where it's got a goal setting section and then self-compassion, commitment and knowledge. And within each of those, there's individual video lessons with workbooks. So they can work through these kind of topics at their own pace. Right.
So sorry, to go back to the 5-day challenge. So you've just finished that. Are you going to run another one at some point? Or?
Yeah, I'll probably do one later in the year, but I don't know yet. I might be having a little pivot within my business, but
right. Okay, well, thanks for explaining all that. And the Next Level podcast, you've done a few podcasts as well yourself. So what was that about?
So I just thought, I love talking about all this mindset and behavior change stuff, and I think sometimes that it is about getting that message out there that it's not, there's a different way to do things, because I think traditionally people will, the default is to track on MyFitnessPal, set your calories, set your macros, do all of that kind of thing. Whereas the message about behavior change is a harder sell for people, because it's like, I can do that because it's following a set process. Whereas this is, you're actually going to have to like really dig into your brain and think about what's going on and why these behaviors are happening. Yeah. And it's hard work.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if people do it and they get those like, oh yeah, that's just magic. Yeah. That's what I love.
Interesting. It's really fascinating. You can tell you have a passion for it, the way you light up when you speak about it. So maybe a good idea that you didn't stay in IT.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, if it's all right with you, I primarily ask this in my own day job as a financial planner, which similarly makes me light up. That's my passion, to help people be comfortable with their money and plan first, money second. So if you don't mind me asking, what's your earliest memory of money? What was money for you like growing up?
I think I was kind of aware as a kid that we had more than some people, but not as much as other people. And we certainly never, like my mum was just, she was amazing and like made sure we had what we needed. But I always remember like the kind of typical phrases I'm sure a lot of people grow up with, like money doesn't grow on trees. And like if we ever asked how much something cost, it would always be money and fair words. And it was kind of, money wasn't really talked about a lot. And we kind of knew that, you know, we couldn't just have whatever we wanted. It was like, you know, you had to wait for your birthday or Christmas, or maybe like occasionally you got like something.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, I think money was a lot tighter than I ever realized.
Do you think that's given you any behaviours, habits around money today from what you've learnt from your parents?
Yeah, I think I have struggled with money management pretty much ever since I started getting paid.
Right.
And so that's taken me something that's taken me quite a long time to try and learn. And I think like maybe having a little bit of that kind of scarcity, there's not enough mindset, and trying to sort of overcome that and trying not to spend right down to the last penny. It's something that I'm working on actually, because I do think it's important. Yeah, I do think that it has impacted me, but I think maybe it's impacted me like the opposite way. So whereas like it would have been like my mum's really good with money, really good at saving, really good at making sure like money's put away and aside for different things. I'm kind of like, well, if it's here, I'm going to spend it maybe in case it goes away.
Oh, interesting. That's very candid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe something you're going to work on in the future.
Yes,
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, it's important, but that's for another conversation. Thank you very much for sharing that. I think I know the answer to this one, but of all the things you've done through your life so far, what's been the most fulfilling thing for you?
Oh, definitely setting up Next Level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It was it felt like such a dream to be able to do it, but also interesting to think, actually, when I look back, it's the journey, really, isn't it? It's never going to register the company. It's everything that got you to that point.
Was there a particular client that you found to be the most fulfilling type person to work with?
My ideal client is somebody who is definitely open to doing the mindset work. So sometimes I'll have calls with people and they're like, I just want a meal plan. And I'm like, that's okay, but it's not how I work with people. So I'll be able to just refer you on to someone else. And then when it doesn't work, come back. No, I don't say that.
Maybe you should.
Maybe. But I think somebody I think it generally tends to be women. Generally, the clients I work best with come with an open mind to this new kind of approach.
So are they young women, older women, menopausal women, perimenopausal women?
Yeah, so lots of my favorite clients to work with are also women around their sort of 40s, 50s, and also either like well into their career, into management, or actually running their own business. I think that tends to be my favorite type of client, because they tend to be the kind of people that are like up for the challenge. They've already been through a lot of challenges and they're like, okay, now this is my next challenge and I'm ready to tackle it. I like that kind of mindset from people.
Superb. Great. Thank you. That was a great answer.
Okay, thanks.
So for any aspiring or existing business owner, entrepreneur, what would be your number one tip to them in their business?
Ask for help.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I've tried to do so much on my own, just through reading and seeing what's out there, and I've had to make a lot of mistakes. And I think as soon as I started paying for coaching, for business coaching, I mean, I had some initial coaching from Carol Glover, who's been on your podcast.
Yes, she has.
Who I absolutely love.
Yeah.
But then, so that was in the very early days of the business, and absolutely the business setup and launch, I owe so much to Carol. And
superb.
Yeah. And then I don't think I really connected the dots at the time of how important that was. And then it's only been in the past couple of years where I've started paying for coaching and guidance, and just the acceleration and the change is incredible. And I wish I'd done it from the beginning. So I would say, don't be scared that someone's going to be like, that idea is not going to work, because it's better to find out from someone with experience than to try it for a year and realize you've wasted a lot of time and money.
Yeah. Excellent. Well done. And well done, Carol.
Yes.
So what do you do to relax then? How do you balance your life?
So I go to the gym.
Excellent. How many times a week?
I go 4 times a week.
Ooh, well done.
And I work with a PT who sets my programs, and that's been such a game changer for me in terms of I always previously trained at the gym to just try and get smaller. And now I'm actively trying to get bigger. And it's a real shift in mindset. And I also find the gym is like an hour where my phone's on Do Not Disturb. No one can message me. My music's on. And when I shifted my perspective from this helps me get skinny to this is my hour away from the world, now I'm like, I can't wait to get to the gym. Instead of, I have to go to the gym.
Yeah, I love it, I must admit. The fact that you go and almost the other people around you keep you accountable, don't they?
Yeah.
To show up and you know, and ask for help if you don't know how to work a machine.
And it's inspiring, isn't it? You see people in there like working on themselves.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing their best. So tell me, what do you think, since you've left a couple of times and come back, what do you think the best things about living in the Isle of Man?
For me, so my other thing, I walk. Like me and my boyfriend will go out, like get up in the hills. We love the Warden's Walks. I don't know if you've looked
The which
them up.
walks?
Warden's Walks.
No, I've got no idea what those are.
Okay, so it's on the government website.
Right.
You just put in Warden's Walks and there's about 7 or 8 of them and they're all over the island.
Blimey.
They've got 3 different categories from like gentle through to really strenuous.
Like ski runs.
Yeah. There's one in Kirkmichael where you go up behind.
Oh, the Baltic, is it called? No, is it the Baltic?
It's where, you know, the tack shop on the main road.
Yeah, I know the
behind
path.
there.
It's horrendous.
It's brutal.
Yeah, it is.
But then it's so beautiful when you get to the top. Check them out. The best thing about them is they're not really marked.
Oh.
So I don't really know how to read an ordnance survey map, but you get a map. So I usually set it on my Fitbit and then we try and trace the same shape. And we get lost all the time.
Oh, right. Well, if you do Strava as well, because then you can download it and then you can save the route to your saved routes and then go back and...
Oh, and then you could repeat it. No, I haven't done that.
Or find somebody who does know the way and then you can follow them. Because if you've got it on your device, it sort of tells you what, you know, turn left, turn right. You've gone off track, you know.
Ah, okay. I didn't know that. That would be really helpful.
I only found it by accident very recently. Yeah.
We just wander around. So I love the Isle of Man for that. You know, you can be up in the hills, you can get off the hills, you can come down, you can get in the sea, all of that stuff. I miss the access to like gigs and theatre and just different experiences. But I think the Isle of Man, I've definitely seen it improve over the years. I think we all have.
Yeah. Is there any opportunities that the island, you know, could be missing out on that you've spotted?
Yeah, I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because of like when you think of the population and then you think of, if you discount people that wouldn't be interested, people that, you know, when you're trying to create something, I don't think it has that same separation as the UK. Like,
yeah.
You know,
well, we're after an economically active population, aren't we? But they have to do something.
Yeah.
So.
And then it's creating something that those people want to do in a location they can access. I think, because I always think like, you know, wouldn't it be great if we had like an Odeon cinema but then you think like, who's going to go to showings at like 2:00 in the afternoon when everyone's at work?
All the retired people that we have here.
Yes.
We have a higher old age dependence ratio.
Just bust them into the cinema.
Yeah.
So I think it's difficult in that aspect to create those activities that, you know, the working population would want, that then they're not only going to be busy 2 days a week at the weekend.
But I mean, to go back to the retired people I know, they're very active and they go to things like the stretch classes at the NSC. Did you know?
Oh, no.
And walk and talk. And,
I've heard of walk and talk.
Yeah, amazing things.
Yeah.
And you can do all sorts. Go to Aquafit, I think, and there's a gym at the NSC.
Yeah.
Yeah, all pretty good things.
There surely must be things that can get set up.
Yeah.
And then I always wonder as well, like, how can it be so difficult for, like, so if you're a musician and you gig in Liverpool and you gig in London and you gig in Edinburgh, how can you not, like, why do we not get those people to the Isle of Man? Like, what's the barrier? Because
we get a few, but I don't know.
Yeah.
We get a lot of Celtic music, but
yeah,
there's lots of homegrown talent there.
Yes, there is.
But, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I always think, why is the Isle of Man never included? They travel over to Belfast, but we never seem to be included on that.
Maybe we don't pay enough.
Probably.
Don't know. Questions to who do we ask?
Who do we ask?
Our listener.
Yes.
Let's ask our listener.
Why do people not come here?
No, just joking. We have lots of listeners. It's a phenomenal yeah, we've had over 11,000 unique downloads since starting. So
Wow,
it's,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I know it's, and you can tell on the map on the global map where the downloads come from, and the vast majority are Isle of Man based. So.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, lots of locals. So it's super, really is. Thank you to our listeners.
Yeah.
So what's next for you, Angela?
Yeah. So, like, as you've probably gathered from my story so far, I'm the kind of person that, does like to make some pretty bold changes. I've never really been afraid of change. And Next Level's been running for 6 years now. And whilst I love it, I feel a little bit unaligned with promoting weight loss as a kind of the main goal. And then, as I've been talking about, I love the habit and behaviour change stuff. There's a bit of an opportunity to switch focus and maybe tweak my audience slightly. So I'm speaking with a business coach and
Right, okay.
exploring that idea for the minute, but Next Level's not going anywhere.
No, that's good to hear, but you'd have to, I suppose, be hiding under a rock to not know the debate about obesity and one of the biggest causes of long-term chronic illness is being overweight, and your waist size, and if my waist size is over what's optimum, apparently. So I should probably have told you this before, but my sister's a nutritionist, but she's in Colorado.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's obviously in the US, there's a massive disconnect between the Food Standards Agency and what's good for you, and that's why there's such a focus for people who know on eating organically. And I just wondered if you had a view on, the Isle of Man standards or the UK standards, and if there's any pressure we could put to bear on lobbying for better or more disclosure on food packaging. 'Cause it all starts with food, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think from a government perspective, it's got to start back in schools, like promoting healthy meals to children, making sure children have got enough to eat, but food of good quality. Like, I think it didn't happen when I was at school, but I believe now that kids can get like bacon baps and sausage baps at their break time.
Oh.
And I completely understand that for children that don't get fed at home because there isn't enough food, then something is better than nothing. But for lots of children that already have enough food, they're not being educated around the impacts that will have on their body. So I do think I can see it from both sides of the coin, from the government's perspective, that if you're just trying to get food to children who aren't being fed, that's one thing. Whether, I don't know how much of an issue that is on the Isle of Man in comparison to maybe some like inner city schools and things like that, but I would not want to be a policymaker.
No, I wouldn't either. No, and it's an interesting topic. It's we could go on forever about that. Okay, so any books you've read recently as a source of inspiration?
Yes.
Yeah. What's on your reading list?
So at the moment, I always like to read like 4 or 5 books at once. Again, I just have one of those minds that needs to be kind of kept active. So I'm currently reading Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before?, which is really interesting. It's a woman, a doctor called Julie Smith, and she's a psychologist. I'm also reading a book called The Tools, which is from a psychologist as well, who has recently done a film with Jonah Hill.
Oh, right, okay.
It's called Stutz.
Right.
It's really good.
I watched the film with him in You People. It's
I've
just
seen
out.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Very good. Yeah.
I'll check that out. But my favourites that I always recommend are Daring Greatly by Brené Brown and Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's a knockout list there. And who inspires you?
Okay, so from a local perspective, I'm going to say Carol Glover. So when I ever need to make a brave decision, I always think to myself, what would Carol say?
Fantastic.
And I know Carol would always say yes, work it out later. So that is a good source of inspiration for me. And then from, I guess, like a more global perspective, Brené Brown, who I just mentioned, I absolutely love her work.
Yes.
And then the business coach that I'm doing some work with as well, Shah Wasmond, she's really inspiring.
And is she local? Or?
She's in the UK.
Right.
And then there's a couple of people I follow sort of on Instagram who I love, like Marie Forleo and a woman called Gala Darling. So she just changed her name because that's what she wanted to be called.
Uh-huh.
And they're all women who just go after what they want. And I think that's really inspiring.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That's a really good list. And what's your favourite quote?
Okay, so my favourite quote is from James Clear, Atomic Habits. And it is, we do not rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And that's my favourite because I have been a little bit disorganised my entire life. And I was always in trouble for not being tidy and not thinking things through and all of that stuff. And it was really when I learned that actually you can't just be told off into learning these things. You have to learn what's the system that enables this. And I think that applies to any change, and it definitely applies to our diet. Yeah. And we have to have systems in place to enable the behaviours we want.
Yeah, that's very deep, very thoughtful. Good. No, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And finally, so where can people go to learn more about you and the work that you're doing? I mean, we'll put all the links in your show notes, but I've seen you're really active on Instagram with your videos. Where else can people go to learn all about you?
Yep, Instagram is my favourite platform. I'm also pretty active on Facebook. I've got a website. I have tried to venture into the land of TikTok, but honestly, it blows my mind.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
And yeah, but Instagram and Facebook. Oh, the podcast. Yeah, I'm generally a little bit everywhere, but Instagram and Facebook are the ones.
They're the main ones.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll put the links in the show notes, as I just said. That's wonderful. So I'd like to thank you so much for coming in and talking today, Angela. I've really enjoyed our conversation today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been really lovely to be here.
Island Influencers is a fortnightly podcast. Make sure you don't miss the next episode by clicking the follow button on your podcast platform. A big thanks to the producer and editor of this episode, Catherine Watts and James Spooner at Bear Content. And thank you for listening.